Okay, so on Saturday there was a protest outside of Westminster from a bunch of people who hand-wrote their signs that said, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action." And as you can see, they all just sat there with their own handwritten signs, and loads of them got arrested. Now, I think this is all really, really petty and trivial, and evidence of a government and a narrative that is coming under remarkable amounts of strain and is overreaching, and so I think these protests are going to end up being successful. One thing to note here is that you can see the sort of age demographic of the protesters and the profile of them, and the fact that this is organic, right? This does seem to be grassroots. Unlike the Stand Up for Rapist protesters, where they turn out with their pre-printed signs and they're bussed in, I suspect these people got there themselves and did make their own signs. They must have organised in some Facebook group or something. But I think that these people did this without backing, frankly. And they did this themselves. I mean, the state isn't in support of this. The state is, in fact, opposed to this. And again, you can look at them, and I bet the average profile is white middle class, about 50 or 60. And that seems to be the information that we got after 522 of them were arrested for displaying the same kind of placard. This was, of course, under the Section 13 of the Terrorism Act 2000. And this, honestly, is just... it makes the British state look ridiculous and pathetic. Actually, sorry, it went up to 532, apparently. So they could have corrected that. Anyway, but around half of them were 60 and above. The average age was 54, I think they say in this article. And so this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. These are white middle class, not necessarily boomers, although many of them will be boomers, but people who are well-to-do. I mean, one of them was sat there saying, you know, with Dr. Scrubs, with like, "I'm a doctor, I oppose genocide." So, okay, well, oh look, the average age was 54. So these are those people who are heavily invested in society. These are not lunatic fringe radicals. These are people who will protest in the same way that Just Stop Oil protests, right? They aren't what we would traditionally characterize as terrorists, and honestly, I mean, Palestine Action are very much cut from the same cloth, and so I really actually do object to calling these people terrorists when we should be calling them virtue signaling prats, because that's really more accurate, and that's really what they are. Now, you'll remember that Palestine Action went and sprayed some paint on a RAF base in Brize Norton, and sprayed 2 military planes of paint, including inside the engines, which did cost millions of pounds of criminal damage. Now, this is something that I don't obviously agree with. Obviously, don't go and vandalise anything. And I'm not saying it's not for political ends, but the thing is, we consider terrorists people who are trying to kill people, usually. Now, I'm not saying that the definition of terrorism can't be expanded, and isn't expanded, it is, to include property damage. But there's something about the intent behind what's happening here that doesn't sit well with me. For example, you've got this guy, Ondrej Sidlenko, whatever, a 21-year-old man, average Bradford man, who had terrorist documents, including instructions to make firearms, explosives, and poisons. This chap seems to have been intending on murdering people, right? Actually murdering people. Actually doing things that were irreversible and taking away things that couldn't be replaced. While I'm not saying they didn't cause millions of pounds of damage, it's millions of pounds of damage. It is less important. It's in its state damage as well. It's not like it's someone's private property. So I would be more happy with them, frankly, just being considered extreme vandals and punished for those reasons. I don't think they're cut from the same cloth. And the Palestine Action people, as insufferable as I personally find them, I don't think they're trying to murder anyone over their beliefs. Anyway, this is going to go to Lord Herman, and Lord Herman, despite being an enemy of the British in all times and all places, because he is also a communist, he is going to be the one making the decision. But the thing is, I don't expect him to actually favour them or judge in their cause well, because he doesn't recognise that Palestine is a state. Now, I don't know whether he has a particular allegiance or bias towards Israel. He is Jewish, although I'm not saying that means he definitely supports Israel or that he is definitely in favour of Palestine, because there are Jewish people on both sides. So I don't know. But given how he personally has signed a letter to stress to the Prime Minister that Palestine doesn't qualify for statehood, well, I'm going to guess that he's pro-Israel and not pro-Palestine. So it's not like the protesters are going to find themselves with a sympathetic ear. Like I said, I think this is really silly. Now, of course, these people, just in case you weren't aware, are being Palestine Action being a proscribed group from the damage they did to RF Bryce Norton. Showing support for them is a crime. So just sitting there with a sign saying, I support Palestine Action, that's a criminal offence. Anyway, like I said, what Palestine Action have done is not really substantively different to Just Stop Oil. They cost more money because I think they've done more damage to actual property. But is this then also terrorism? Because they are also advancing a political message. They are also, in fact, very much cut from the same sort of demographic as the Palestine Action protesters. They're doing the same sorts of things. They're obviously not trying to kill people. So are Just Stop Oil a terrorist group as well? Why would they not also be proscribed? And one might suggest that really Palestine Action have been proscribed because the narrative that is in defense of Israel has many, many, many critics at this point. And the narrative itself, well, seems to be shaky, shall we say. It looks like Israel has lost the PR war on this one, and the criminalization of Palestine Action is a way of trying to recapture that, or at least just suppress those people who support Palestine and support Gaza. Now, I've said this many times, I personally don't have a dog in this fight. I'm very tired of hearing about Middle Eastern countries, and I'm very sick of them having any influence over my politics in this country. So I'm not committed either way, and I don't really care about either side or the people who are committed either way. If you're committed to that, okay, great, I don't care. If you're committed to that, great, I don't care. It's just not something that interests me, and it's not something that affects my evaluation of the politics, I think, for England and more broadly speaking, Britain and the Anglosphere, which are the things I really care about. And then more broadly out of that, I would suggest Europe, and then Middle Eastern countries come into my rest of the world category. And don't get me wrong, I wish well for the rest of the world in a sort of broad and quite faint sense, but like, you know, in the kind of Burkean concentric circles outwards, it's very abstract, and it's not really something I intend to have anything to do with. Anyway, as you can see, the UN Office of Human Rights find this all quite disturbing because they understand that this is just too heavy-handed for what is happening, actually, I think. And honestly, I can't help but agree with them. I think they're right about this. It's an extension of the thing that is too far. Because, I mean, this is what the counter-terrorism legislation actually says, right? According to Section 1 of the Terrorism Act, the definition of the thing is where it involves serious violence against a person or serious damage to property, endangers a person's life, creates a serious risk to the health and safety of the public, or is seriously designed to interfere or seriously disrupt an electronic system. So it's obviously this one that they're tripping here. Well, that just... It feels like the intent isn't being properly captured in this definition. And the thing is, there is no good definition of what terrorism actually is. And the UK has 4 main pieces of counter-terror legislation because we have been unable to properly nail down what it is when we see what it is what it is that we are talking about when we are trying to define a terrorist. I mean, now everyone knows it when they see it, right? When someone yells Allahu Akbar at an Ariana Grande concert and then blows themselves up, that's terrorism. When someone is, I don't know, running people down in the middle of the street, whether it's at the Finsbury Park Mosque or not, that's terrorism. But this, I mean, I just don't think this meets the threshold. I think what this is just a very extreme and clumsy form of political activism. I don't think they're trying to hurt anyone, and I don't think they deserve to be prescribed, frankly. And I think that it's quite worrying that the managerial state has decided that for what is quite a non-threatening form of protest, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not inconvenient, I'm not saying don't punish them. Absolutely punish them. You know, if you cause millions of pounds worth of damage to a plane or whatever, sure, you get punished for for vandalism and property destruction and whatever else. And they, you know, I'm sure they can spend a good deal of time in prison and should. But to call them terrorists, honestly, is more than they deserve. Right? It makes them way too much a threat to the state, and I just don't think that they are, actually. Because if you look at the actual demographic of what you're dealing with, these are not people who are threats to the state. These are the state. These are all going to be people who hold professional jobs, and in every other time and place are complete. I bet none of them have never paid the none of them have failed to pay their taxes. I bet most of them don't have criminal records. You know, I don't think these people are terrorists. I think that the British state is being way too sensitive, frankly, in defence of Israel.